DC animation has been the most important factor, or one of the most crucial factors in the DC brand for decades, as some of the highly praised TV shows and movies come through the animation. The DCAU cartoons, or the really highly established DC animated movies like Under the Red Hood, Mask of the Phantasm, Flashpoint, as they are really encapsulate some of the best stories in the DC universe. And they just have, like, even over Marvel, even though like the MCU, would beat the, I guess, current state of the DCEU for many years now, that DC has had a one up over Marvel through its animation department. They have consistently put out in the past, a lot of great animated films and animated series that have been a highlight in what makes, like, when people think most memorable of the highlights of the DC universe through media is through the animation. But as of recently, I guess ever since the emergence of the New 52 inspired animated universe, or the DC animated movie universe, that like had a series of movies that had the same animation style and were kind of following certain story beats, kind of leading to an overarching narrative, starting with Justice League Flashpoint Paradox and ending with Justice League Dark Apocalypse War. And ever since then, I've noticed kind of like a decline when it comes to DC animated movies, because like before then, you had a flux of different DC animated movies that weren't connected in any way. They were kind of just doing their own thing and would take inspiration from certain beloved comic stories, like Batman Under the Red Hood, or the Wonder Woman movie, or Superman Unbound, kind of like those movies taking inspiration from certain stories, or like The Dark Knight Returns, just literally, or Batman Year One adapting the comic stories, and get like not really changing much, and even going as far as to like maybe even get the writer from the comic to input on the movie, or adapting the art style. But they don't really do that as much anymore. Like whenever they adapt a comic storyline, they kind of do it in a way where it has to fit in the universe that they have established. Like a perfect example of this is Batman Hush, where instead of it being kind of like a standalone thing, it's like it's set in this universe, and they go out of their way to make changes. And I think some of these changes is kind of one of the problems I have with DC animation, is that whenever they adapt a story, they go out of their way to, let's say, like change the identity of the villain, or make significant changes as a way of surprising the audience. With I think Batman Gotham by Gaslight, they changed the identity of Jack the Ripper. Spoiler alert, I guess. I believe it was Jim Gordon in the movie, but in the comic it was someone else. And then Batman Hush, which is the one that pisses me off the most, is the fact that instead of being like Thomas Elliot, being Hush, they changed it to Riddler. And the fact that they took that one element from the comic where he like used the Lazarus Pit, but they just decided to like make him the main villain. And I think that's just a really annoying thing that happened, because no one really wins at that point, because the people who've never seen it or read the book, they think that's how it goes. And then the people who do adore that book, they just want to see what they like about it so much adapted into like an animated format. But I think like the actual biggest issue with current DC animation, not just with their movies but through TV shows as well, is just a lack of marketing. Like it seems like a lot of like Warner Brothers or whoever at DC just doesn't really do a good job of like actually pushing out these movies. Like I guarantee you a lot of people watching this video probably haven't, or maybe haven't heard much about the Legion of Superheroes animated movie that came out earlier this month. Like I think it was like February 6th, February 7th, something like that. They came out on digital and Blu-ray, and there wasn't really a lot of marketing for that. Or I think a good example of that was in Young Justice Phantoms season 4. They literally announced it during DC Fandom 2021, and it premiered that exact day. Like they didn't build up to it, they didn't hype it up, they didn't have like a huge marketing campaign for it. They were just like, Young Justice Phantoms now on HBO Max. And it's just, a lot of people didn't know about it. You look at clips from Young Justice, people are like, wait, this came out? This didn't? Yeah. It's just they don't know much about it. Or the fact that Batman Superman Battle of the Super Sons came out in October, and there's just like a list of animated projects coming out this year. Batman The Doom That Came to Gotham, Justice League Warworld, some weird Ruby project that no one cares for. It's just like they just don't have as much of an emphasis on pushing out these movies as much as they used to my knowledge. Back then, like I still keep up to date with certain animated projects, but it's because through like a social media account, not through like actual genuine announcements, or when they drop a new trailer I have to like actually dig for it from time to time. And the lack of marketing, I guess, could be, tracked to like maybe lower sales, and that could, be the catalyst or factor into lower budget for these movies or animated projects. Is a lot of the animation, like the production budget, is just dropped significantly. I think Jay Oliva confirmed himself that like, every year, like the, production, cost, or like the actual budget for these movies just get lower and lower every year. And I guess that's kind of the reason as to why they all look the same. They don't have that visual flair that they once had, where each animated movie kind of had its own style. And if it was adapting a popular comic storyline, it would go out of its way to kind of look like that. Like Batman the Long Halloween, they don't really adapt the Tim Sale art style for the movie. Because I remember like it was an interview where one of the people who worked on the film said that they tried to get Tim Sale to kind of do their own visual style for it, but the higher ups said that they wanted to, or I don't know if it was higher ups or some people said that they couldn't because they wanted to have an art style that was easily adaptable to like other projects, like an art style that they could do for a series of movies to have in like their own interconnected universe.
Well, the issue was I actually originally I thought this was going to be the only film I do. So I didn't know I was going to extend into other movies. I was going to do Tim Sale's style. I was just trying to figure out at the time, how can I make that work in animation? So I had about a few months to figure it out, but while I was working on other stuff. And I was going to call Tim and talk to him and see if he wanted to do some pre-production work so we could sort this out. But things changed during that period, and James Tucker was leaving as a producer for the DC animated movies, which he was, pretty much running most of them. And Bruce Timm was doing his Elseworld stuff. So they told me, well, if you're going to do Long Halloween, we need a style that's going to carry through a series of films. I didn't get a chance to do the Tim Sale look for this film, but I still tried to retain certain things.
But it's just like, because of lower budget, the animation doesn't look as crisp, it doesn't look as clean, the art styles look really like similar and formulaic, and it just doesn't, I guess it wasn't the same as it used to be. And for these movies, I guess they don't have they're just not as compelling, I feel like. I guess this kind of has to do with them doing changes to certain comic storylines, but like they kind of just don't hit the same, in my opinion. You have stories like, you think best DC animated movies, Batman Under the Red Hood, The Dark Knight Returns, Batman Year One, everything from the voice talent to the animators, they really, go out of their game and they really put in their all. But like with some of these movies, I think like, they have some pretty mediocre entries. I think one is like Suicide Squad, Hell to Pay, it's just kind of like, it's just in my opinion, kind of generic, doesn't really do anything to go out of its way to stand out or be unique in any way, shape, or form. Or with something like maybe Green Lantern, Beware My Power, and they kind of adapt like the Parallax storyline with like Hal Jordan, Jon Stewart, but the way the movie kind of goes about it is weird. It has like awkward silences in it, and the way they kind of just handle some of the aspects of the Green Lantern Corps I wasn't the biggest fan of. But to talk about like some of the certain issues that have been kind of concurrent in DC animation, I don't just want to like sit here and complain about it. Like I still enjoy a lot of DC animated movies, but I think things that could do to make it better. I don't want to like present a problem and not come up with a solution or like give my take as to how it could be better. I think that's what a lot of these issues with the media, it's like people just complain about it, but I want to actually say what I think they could be better or how to like improve upon it going forward. I guess stemming from low production budget, they just need to market these movies more, like push them out, like hype them up. If they were to do like a Kingdom Come animated movie, I'd be like, go at Comic-Con and make a whole spiel about it, give a emphasis on it and really get some talented artists and animation designers to make it really look clean, because like not like some formulaic like art style or animation, make it look cheap or not. No, go all out with it and really market it, really appeal to people. And I don't think that every DC animated movie needs to look the same. Kind of go back to like pre-Flashpoint, where like each one had its own art style, its own visual flair to it, and kind of really stand out as to why it's so memorable. If you have every movie kind of look the same, they kind of just blur together in terms of like tone, direction, emphasis on like storytelling. If it's all like the same and formulaic, then they don't stand out. They don't make it memorable. You know, a lot of like the DC AMU movies in the New 52, like some of them kind of blend together from time to time. They're kind of like generic, not bad, not like amazing. So I think that's like one of the first things you do with that. And you know, when it comes to adapting comic book stories, like if they were to do like Kingdom Come or like Batman Nightfall, don't go out of your way to change it for the sake of changing it. You know, don't change the identity of the main villain, or don't try to surprise the audience if they might have read the book, because most times people watching these movies probably haven't read the book, so it wouldn't really make sense to change it anyway. You know, look at anime and manga. You know, it's like a lot of people read the manga, yet the anime is still very popular from people who haven't read the manga or people who did. And if you did try to change it from the manga, you know, just the fan base will just get pissed off. I mean, look at Full Metal Alchemist. I mean, it went kind of so far away from the manga that they literally did a new one, Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, that was more akin to the manga, and I heard is like much better. So it's just like, and you know, if you do small changes, kind of do it for the sake of the story, to like make it a bit more neat in its pacing, kind of like tighten up a little bit, and just have a better execution, kind of like Batman Under the Red Hood, where they got the writer from the actual storyline. And you know, there were some changes, but it wasn't anything significant. It was just kind of like get rid of some of the access stuff to make it more self-contained. So I just going forward with that, I think is like the best direction, and hopefully a brighter future for DC animation. But it might not be the case, as like I feel like animation might not be a priority, but that could change with James Gunn's plan. You know, you have like Creature Commandos, and I would assume more animated projects in the future. I think it just started production not too long ago. But you know, if as long as they, you know, actually put care in the animation, they could have people care about it again. Because it's not like, oh, animation's for kids or people don't care about animation. Like I said, like with anime, it's like super popular. So as long as you have really compelling stories and really talented people behind it, you can really make that animation side of DC pop out like it once used to.